Well, LSU gets the win at home against Auburn, a commanding win, 48-18 on Saturday night. We'll break down what looked good, what this team still needs to work on, and I think the number one question that I've been asking myself since Saturday night, and that is this defense getting better, or is Auburn's offense just that bad?
You are Locked On LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, thank you for making Locked On LSU your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Plus, you can also check us out on YouTube as well. So just search Locked On LSU in the search bar. Hit that subscribe button. You'll get notified as soon as Locked On LSU podcasts drop. My name is Caroline Fenton, and I am your host, as I am every single day. And then let's get into it because LSU defeats Auburn at home 48-18. Now, we saw some great things, of course, as we can all expect at this point, week in and week out. Just magical things from Jayden Daniels in the run game and the pass catchers. Did the defense look a little bit better? We'll get into all of that. But first and foremost, I wanted to get into exactly why I thought Saturday was such a good night. Why Saturday may have been a step, not a leap, not, not massive, leaps and bounds forward, but a step, a good step in the right direction for this LSU team. And part of the reason why I think it's a good step for this LSU team is because I felt like Saturday night was a confidence booster for that team. I felt like Saturday night that they could walk off the field with their heads held high and say, we just dominated. Like, we just dominated that team, and they were probably feeling themselves being at home. I mean, Brian Kelly even mentioned some of the false start penalties, which we'll get into, that are a problem. But some of the false start penalties he kind of chalked up to just Tiger Stadium being that loud. And look, this is a team that's used to Tiger Stadium being loud. So I think that's a testament to the crowd. That's a testament to the environment. And that's a testament to this team for just imposing their will. And a good team, but a team that you should have beaten. I said last week on the podcast, look, you're the number one offense in the country. Still are after that game. You're the number one offense in the country. You're the best offense in the SEC. You got a Heisman Trophy caliber quarterback, and you're putting up consistently 500 yards, 500 plus yards a game. Now, Auburn is not a rinky-dink cupcake opponent, but Auburn is very much so a team that's in transition. I don't think that they think that Hugh Freeze thinks, or anyone on that offensive coaching staff thinks, that they have their quarterback of the future in that room. It's a team that cannot pass the football, cannot throw the ball. They have a solid run game and a good run defense. I mean, we talked about this with Zach Blackerby last week, who hosts Locked On Auburn. He said, is Auburn's defense the best that LSU has played since Florida State? I said, it's honestly probably so. And I don't know if that says more about Auburn or if it says more about Arkansas and Ole Miss and Mississippi State and Missouri and the SEC teams that LSU has already played. But Auburn has a stout run defense that ranks top 25, top 30 in the country. So this isn't some rinky-dink cupcake college team. But that's not a bad team. And you beat them, and you beat them handedly. And really, from the jump, there were moments, and we'll get into those moments. There were some moments that you felt a little bit uncomfortable. There were some moments where you felt a little bit uneasy. But we could all collectively, probably those guys that were suited up on the sideline and all of us watching at home or in the stadium, could collectively breathe a sigh of relief. That's not something that we've been able to do since the Mississippi State game. Think about that. 3 games in a row. Arkansas, Ole Miss, and Missouri. All of our hearts were racing through our chests. At least I can speak for myself. That it was stressful, that it was anxiety ridden, and that it came down to the last possession. Think about those 3 games. Those 3 games were shootouts. Those 3 games were, if it comes down to you having the ball last and you making fewer mistakes, you win that football game. And honestly, frankly, I was getting really sick and tired of being caught up in these super close games. Now, I'm not going to say that I was like dreading this game by any means, but because of course not. Anytime I get an opportunity to watch the LSU Tigers play football, I'm going to take it and I'm going to, show up with bells on. But overall, I'm like, all right, okay, let's buckle up, everybody. Let's get prepared for another night of your blood pressure being up here. Let's get ready for another night of, you know, sweating and walking around my house, just pacing around back and forth because here we go again. It was nice to not be in that position. It was nice to be able to just enjoy the game and breathe a sigh of relief and to enjoy just a dominant win. If you're watching on YouTube, I'm having some serious camera issues, so sorry about that. It was nice to be able to watch this team and all of its talent and how good it is just impose their will. Because part of my frustrations with those 3 games, it didn't just come from the anxiety of watching a close game, because that's fun. That's what we watch football for. A lot of my frustration came from the fact that I thought that LSU was just better than those teams. That I thought LSU should have beaten those teams a little bit easier than they did. That I thought that LSU should have beaten Ole Miss. I didn't think that LSU should have been in that much of a gunfight with Arkansas. Now, Missouri, they're a good team, and they're a very good offense. But it came from the fact of just like, man, like you have the better offense. You have the better team, at least on one side of the football. It shouldn't be this uncomfortable. And it was very refreshing to see a win like that. It was very encouraging to see a win like that. Because I've been saying for the past 3 weeks, you might just have to win games like that. Buckle up, everybody. Get ready. Because this is what this LSU Tigers experience is going to be like this season. Something that, frankly, we are really accustomed to. Accustomed to a 9-6 defensive battles. Not this season. Nope, it is 45-42 kind of games. But it was just nice to not be anxious. LSU scored on its first 4 possessions in the first half, scored touchdowns in all 4 of its possessions in the second half. Limited what Auburn wanted to do offensively. Good day in my book, and like Hugh Freeze said, they beat us in every single way possible. Good, because that's what a good team does. Beat up against teams that you're supposed to beat. Coming up next, some things that were maybe a little uncharacteristic for this LSU team that I think we learned a lot about. And what I really liked, it's uncharacteristic, but I liked it. And we'll get into that coming up next. Today's edition of Locked On LSU is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first order and your first purchase. So if you have ever had an annoying or frustrating ticket buying experience, you are not alone. Whether it was waiting in really long virtual lines, or if it's getting, buying tickets from a third-party ticket website, getting to the event, and you realize like, oh, hey, this view is not what I signed up for. This was not what I thought that I was getting myself into. Whether you wanted to find last-minute tickets to something and you couldn't find them, we've all been there. But you shouldn't have to worry when you're buying tickets to your next big event. Use Game Time. Game Time is the fastest and easiest way to buy tickets for sporting events, concerts, comedy shows, theater events, all sorts of events near you. They've got killer last minute deals and all in prices, views from your seat, and the best price guaranteed. Plus, Game Time takes all of the guesswork out of buying tickets. So, actually, some friends and I am going to the LSU Florida game here in a few weeks, and we were looking at third-party ticket services, and there were all sorts of hidden fees, and I just didn't quite trust it. So, I went to the Game Time app, and the Game Time app had flash deals for the LSU Florida game. So, if you're going to that game or another LSU game coming up this season, check out Game Time for it. So it had the flash deals and it let me know, okay, this is your best deal. This is going to be the lowest price. This is how you can find, 5 or 6 tickets together. So it was such an easy and seamless ticket buying experience. It's so easy to find and buy tickets for whatever event that you want to find. But in my experience in trying to find tickets for the LSU game, it was so easy because I could filter it by price. I could filter it by view. I could filter it by where we wanted to sit. And could get a picture of what our in-game viewing experience is going to be like. So highly, highly recommend. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. You can download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code Locked On College, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. So, a lot of us this time of year play fantasy football, and we're 6 weeks into the NFL season. Maybe your fantasy football team is totally shot, and you're looking for something else to keep you entertained and another way to make money throughout the college football or NFL season. Or let's say your fantasy team is absolutely crushing it, and you're like, I got to get me some more of this. Like, I'm killing it. I'm killing the game. I'm killing the predictions. I want another way to cash in. Well, Prize Picks is a great way to do that. So Prize Picks is the most fun that I've ever had, winning up to 25 times my money this football season. All you do is just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projected stats. So let's say, okay, more than 250 passing yards for Joe Burrow or less than 75 rushing yards for Saquon Barkley, and then you place your entry. It is that simple and it is so much fun doing it. And honestly, for me, it keeps me sharp. I can test my skills on Prize Picks this football season in the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. So if you've got the skills and you think that you can look into your little crystal ball, then you can turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. And one thing that I really like about the Prize Pick app is the reboot policy. So your entries will stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. So for NFL games and college football top 25 matchups, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and doesn't return in the second half, so whether that player got ejected or that player is injured, then that player is, quote, rebooted. So Prize Picks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with injury insurance. I play fantasy. Christian McCaffrey is on my team. He got a little bit banged up this past weekend, and I'm thinking, oh no, Christian McCaffrey's carrying my team. It would have been really nice to have a little bit of insurance. So do that with Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/locked on college and use code locked on college for a first deposit match up to $100. That's prizepicks.com/locked on college. Use code locked on college for a first deposit match up to $100. Daily fantasy sports made easy with Prize Picks. All right, college football season is here, and this season, Locked On is kicking up our coverage with Locked On College Football Kickoff Live. Every Friday, Locked On will go live at 11 a.m. Eastern on every single Locked On College YouTube channel. College Football Kickoff Live will cover playoff implications, conference rivalry games, and go in depth like only Locked On can, including insight and analysis from our stable of Locked On College hosts covering their team every single day. So you can find Locked On College Football Kickoff Live every Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern on any Locked On College YouTube channel. You will not want to miss it. So let's get into it. A few things that felt a little bit different, uncharacteristic, and not necessarily uncharacteristic in a bad way, just different. And look, when you go through 7 weeks of a season, you're going to have to learn how to win games different ways. You're going to learn new things about your team. You're going to get better and evolve week over week over week. So you're going to start to see new things. There were two things in particular that I saw that LSU had to overcome, or LSU did a little bit differently, or we saw something or someone a little bit different that was really honestly pretty encouraging to me. First and foremost, and you might already be on to me, like you might already know what I'm talking about here. And that is your leading receiver on the day. It was the leading receiver on a day. I wouldn't say that, no, that's the craziest thing I'd ever heard. I would just say, okay, well, what else is going on here? Because Kyren Lacy had 4 receptions for 111 yards. I mean, that stat line is absolutely astronomical. He had that long 57-yard bomb. But it was nice to see Kyren Lacy get involved in those long ball situations because through 6 weeks at least, through, Florida State to Missouri, you could look at it and say that it was a duo of receivers between Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas because, for the most part, that's what it has been. It's been the Malik Neighbors show, who is now the leading receiver in college football, eclipsed Luther Burden after this past week. And Brian Thomas was kind of the supplemental receiver. And now I don't really think that that's going to change. I still think that it's going to be the Brian Thomas and Malik Neighbors show. And then you might see, a Chris Hilton or a Kyren Lacy or a Mason Taylor adding into the pass catching game to be more supplemental. But I thought it was really nice and a good change of pace to get Kyren Lacy involved for a few reasons. One, to feel so he can feel like he's involved. My co-host in Nashville played wide receiver in the NFL for 15 years. He talks to me a lot about that, about how you got to get receivers involved because then they just start to get checked out. Like they'll just check out of the game, they'll get frustrated, and you might roll your eyes at that and say, "Oh, boo hoo, just do whatever's best for the football team." I hear you, because that's ultimately kind of what I thought when he first said that to me. I was like, "Really? Like, what if you win the football game? You're going to be upset?" He was like, "They're receivers. They've got egos. They're divas." So I think it was good to let Kyren Lacy kind of have a day where he can continue to prove and carve out his role on this offense. So, on the Kyren Lacy side of things, love that. The second side of things is there is going to be a day, and I have a feeling that that day is going to come on the first Saturday in November when there are defenses or a defense that sells out to stop Malik Neighbors. And maybe sells out to stop both Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas. Because they'll look at it and say, well, look, you got the best receiver in the country on your team. We're not going to let him beat us. Now, that's probably easier said than done, but that's what I always say before any opponent is, who's your best offensive player? Who's your best defensive player? Great. Don't let them beat you. Because at the end of the day, if your number 2 receiver, your number 2 running back, or whatever it might be, beats you, if you let your backup pass rusher get to the quarterback 4 or 5 times, then you know what? Hats off to you because you were just the better team that day. Because your players were better that day. But we're not going to let these individual players beat us. There's going to come a day when you're going to have to rely on a Kyren Lacy probably to win you a game or to win you a series or to win you just a play, a down, to get you a first down, whatever it might be. You might need to find Kyren Lacy in the end zone because he's the only receiver that doesn't have 2 guys on him. So I think that it was nice and refreshing to see a big game, an emergence from Kyren Lacy, best game of his career, most yards that he's ever recorded in a single game in his career as an LSU Tiger. So good to see that. Now, look, now you got yet another option that you feel like can take over a game. Because you always felt good about Kyren Lacy, but I never really, in my own personal opinion, put him in the same category as Malik Neighbors or Brian Thomas. And really, frankly, I don't. I still don't. I still don't put a Kyren Lacy in the same category as a Malik Neighbors. But at least now we know that he can be a game wrecker like those two are. That he can be relied upon in some of those long ball explosive play situations. So good to see that there. One, the emergence of Kyren Lacy. Another side to that too is I found myself watching that game at one point. It was maybe like early in the third quarter that I was like, huh, Is Brian Thomas playing today? Because I haven't really seen much of anything from him. I do wonder if that I'm still having camera issues. My bad, y'all. Um, I did wonder if that was maybe a strategic move on Mike Denbrock's part to say, "Hey, we're gonna put a little bit more on Kyren Lacy's plate today, and we're not gonna give Brian Thomas as many looks." Because it wasn't an issue of Brian Thomas. They pull up his stats on the day: 2 receptions for 7 yards. So it's not like he was dropping a bunch of passes. He just didn't really get a lot of looks. So I do wonder if that was partly on Jayden Daniels taking what the defense gave him, and if part of that was a strategic plan on Mike Denbrock to get more receivers involved. But even with that being said, I mean, Malik Neighbors still had a monster day: 6 receptions for 89 yards. He had the big 30-yarder and then a touchdown. Um, that has started to become like a sub 100-yard receiving day. Has felt like almost like a slow day for Malik Neighbors. So I'm trying like hell to not take Malik Neighbors and what he does for this football team for granted. But it is crazy that we've gotten to the point where it's like, oh, 89 yards, huh? Awfully pedestrian day. But I think that I have emerged from that game feeling even more confident about this pass catching core than I was this time last week. And to be frank with you, I didn't really think that was possible, but loved, loved, loved what I saw from Kyren Lacy. But coming up next, another thing that was maybe a little bit out of the ordinary, maybe a little bit uncomfortable, at least for me and maybe for the team as well, that I thought they handled really well and made me step away from that game feeling really good about this team. And we'll get into that coming up next. It is now time for your game changer of the week, brought to you by Athletic Brewing Company. Much like Harold Perkins, Athletic Brewing has completely changed the non alcoholic beer game. They make non alcoholic brews that actually taste good. So, Harold Perkins came up with a big defensive stop when LSU really needed it most. Auburn was driving early in the third quarter, and Harold Perkins came up with a sack and forced Auburn to kick a field goal. From that moment on, every time LSU touched the football, they got into the end zone. It was a massive, defensive wake up, and it was a massive stop when this team needed it the most. So Harold Perkins continues to assert his dominance. But I want to tell you about Athletic Brewing Company because it's completely changed the non-alcoholic brew game. They make non-alcoholic brews that actually taste good. They've got full flavor and they're well crafted, just like a full strength brew. Their brews are great tasting and award winning. They actually beat out full strength brews in global competitions. My personal favorite is the sea salt and lime brew. It is so delicious and so refreshing. And it doesn't taste like fake lime, like fake citrus, how I feel like maybe some other drinks might taste. It is such a refreshing, true lime flavor. I cannot recommend them enough. Plus, the other great thing about it is they're fit for all times. You can make any time, anywhere, and any activity so much more enjoyable. So whether you're sitting on the couch watching an LSU game, or you're at your kid's soccer game, maybe you're tackling work, or you're working out, Athletic Brewing is perfect for any time. Plus, a little cherry on top: no hangovers ever. So you can find Athletic Brewing Company's non-alcoholic brews at a store near you, or you can buy online at athleticbrewing.com. First time customers can use code LOCKED ON to get 15% off of your first online order. That is code LOCKEDON at checkout for 15% off at athleticbrewing.com. Near beer, exclusions and conditions apply. Athletic Brewing Company, fit for all times. All right, y'all. Thanks again for making Locked In LSU your first listen every single day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. So there were a couple things that that at least I saw LSU do on Saturday night that made me think, all right, okay, I feel better about this team. This is a little, new little nugget that I feel like I'm learning about you. The first one was Kyren Lacy. A career day, your leading receiver on the day. I thought he looked good. I thought that trust between he and Jayden Daniels has been really, it's at least looked like an all-time high. The fact that Jayden Daniels is trusting to target him and Kyren Lacy is coming down with the football, I think that's huge, especially if and when that day comes that Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas are completely locked down. probably by a team that goes, sounds like Schmama. They're not going to let Malik Neighbors beat them. At least I don't think so. Now, that's what makes Malik Neighbors so great, is I think so many defenses sell out to stop him, and he still cannot be stopped. But it's nice to see yet another weapon for Jayden Daniels in the passing game. The second thing that I saw that I don't think is necessarily new, but it's still really nice to see. And it's something that we saw maybe some sneak peeks of in that second half against Missouri. Now, after the Missouri game, I said, look, let's remember that we're grading this defense on a curve. We're grading this defense with this perspective of it being statistically the worst defense in the history of LSU football. So, yeah, I mean, the bar's on the floor. Like, no, we're not comparing this defense to some of the Dave Aranda defenses of the mid to late 2010s. However, I thought that I saw important breakthroughs from the LSU defense, and that was simply just stops when you needed to make them. In the second half against Missouri, you still gave up over 200 yards of offense and 2 scores. But you had a couple of sacks in the second half. You had a pick six that really sealed the game. So overall, you had timely stops when you needed them, and that made the difference of the game. I saw that again against Auburn. A couple of those, and I think they came all, within one chunk of the game. Late in the second half, early in the third. So late in the second half, Jayden Daniels throws the interception, which we'll continue to get into Jayden Daniels and his performance throughout the rest of the week. It wasn't the worst thing that I had ever seen in the world. I didn't think it was incredibly egregious. Yes, you need to take care of the football. And no, that's not very characteristic of Jayden Daniels. But it got tipped up by a player, I believe, who has 5 interceptions on the season. So averaging almost an interception a game. And then, Auburn player just came down with it. Unfortunate, hate to see it. You were up 20-7, so you at least felt comfortable enough, like it wasn't going to completely end the game. But it was a series of important defensive stops that didn't allow Auburn to capitalize off of that turnover. Because I think that the most important thing is, one, taking care of the football, not turning the ball over. But 2, when you do turn the ball over, making sure that that doesn't turn into any more opportunities for your opponent. And LSU was able to limit, for the most part, what Auburn wanted to do and didn't allow them to score off of that. So I thought that was some big defensive momentum going into the locker room at halftime, and then coming back early in the, like, it's comfortable, but it's not the most comfortable lead in the world. Like, Auburn gets the ball first. Auburn is driving. Well, if they score there, it's 20-14. That's a much different ball game. That's a much different conversation, and that's even more uncomfortable. And it was at that moment that I was thinking, here we go. Here comes the super uncomfortable second halves where it really just becomes a shootout. And every time you score, your defense goes out on the field and gives up another touchdown, and your offense has that much more to do when they get the ball back, because the offense has to score a touchdown because the defense can't stop anybody from scoring touchdowns. Harold Perkins came up with a really key sack and forced Auburn to kick a field goal instead of scoring a touchdown. It's 3rd and 5 at the LSU 18. They're running the ball fairly well. They're kind of dinking and dunking and picking up, yards when they really need it. Plus the big pass from Robbie Ashford to Brandon Frazier, who had a touchdown on the day as well. So it was like a 40-something yard pass, and I'm thinking, oh gosh, they're just picking the secondary apart. Driving into LSU territory, 3rd and 5, Harold Perkins comes up with a sack. So that was huge. You force Auburn to kick a field goal there. Now it's 20-10. And that is a much different situation than 20-14. Because instead of being down 1 score, they're now down 2. And then LSU got the ball back and scored a touchdown. And then you forced a punt. And then LSU got the ball back and scored a touchdown. And then Auburn scored a touchdown. And then you scored a touchdown. And then Auburn had a turnover on downs. And then you scored a touchdown. So, yes, it was a very dominant offensive day. But I thought that what we saw when the offense put the defense in a difficult position, which is not something that has happened very frequently because Jayden Daniels, for the most part, has taken care of the football. This team overall doesn't turn the ball over very frequently. When the offense put the defense in a tough position, the defense needed to come up with a stop after a turnover, they did. When the defense needed to come up with a stop early in the third quarter, they did. And I felt like that really set the tone and the momentum for the rest of the football game. But coming up in tomorrow's edition of Locked On LSU, I want to continue to break down this game, peel back some of the layers. I'm so excited to continue to talk about the records and the numbers that this LSU offense is putting up. And also, I will answer the question that I've been pondering since Saturday, and that is this LSU defense getting better? Can we feel a little bit more optimistic about this LSU defense? We'll get into that on tomorrow's edition of Locked On LSU.